Good morning. Today is August 17th, 2018. We are on the record at 9:41 a.m. This is the videotape deposition of Mr. Anton Mawhood in the matter of Helder Flores versus the City of Houston, Texas et al. In the USDC Southern District of Texas. My name is Ben Harwood, and I'm the videographer present on behalf of Stratus Legal. Will counsel please state their appearance and firm affiliation for the record?
UA Lewis Law Group, for Helder Flores, plaintiff.
Randall Callanan for the plaintiff.
Jim Butt and Jennifer Callan for the city defendants.
Kimberly Clark for La Estancia Apartments and 2012 multifamily real estate firm.
Will the court reporter please swear in the witness, and we may proceed.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I'd like to mention this on the record. We'd like to have a signature.
Could you state your full name?
Yes, sir. Anton Mawhood.
And how is Anton spelled?
Anton.
Okay. And how old are you?
I am 49, sir.
And would you like to be referred to in the deposition as Anton, Mr. Mawhood, Officer Mawhood?
Whatever you prefer, I'm fine with any of the above.
Okay. Mr. Mawhood, where do you presently work?
I presently work for the Houston Police Department at the Midwest Division.
And what is the address of the station at the Midwest Division?
7222 Regency Square Boulevard in Houston.
And how long have you worked at the Midwest Division?
Well, here most recently since August of last year. When we started, Midwest and the West Side was all one division, but it's generally in the same area. So it kind of broke off, but I was at West Side for the most part, and then went to Midwest last August.
And where were you stationed when Helder Flores was shot?
I was stationed at the Midwest Command.
Which is the same address?
No, sir, that's at 3203 South Dairy Ashford.
So basically, you did change the location of the station for the Midwest
Yes, sir.
Division, because you said Midwest. You're working now, and you used to work at Midwest, but you moved.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry for the
Southwest what did you say?
I'm sorry?
3003 Southwest what?
Oh, I'm sorry. 3203 South Dairy Ashford.
Oh, South Dairy Ashford.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and where were you born?
Washington, D.C.,
And where did you go to high school?
here in Houston,
Which high school?
St. Thomas High School,
And what year did you graduate?
1987.
And what did you do right after graduating?
Worked a summer job, then attended University of Houston.
Okay, and that summer job was?
I believe it was painting apartments.
Okay. And then you attended the University of Houston in the fall of 1987?
I signed up there. I didn't necessarily get the classes that I wanted, so I did not attend that actual semester, but I picked it up in 1988.
Okay, so you started at U of H downtown or over at the main campus?
Main campus, sir.
Okay, and what classes did you take in 1988?
Just the required classes for undergraduate.
And what were you, at that time, what occupation degree were you seeking?
I think I was undeclared initially, but throughout the course of my studies there, I think I ended up declaring myself as a criminal justice major.
And did you ever get a degree in criminal justice?
I did not.
And so how many credits approximately do you believe you received from the University of Houston?
I received 60 credits from the main campus and then another 3 credits from the downtown campus, to the best of my recollection.
Okay. And so when did you start going to the University of Houston downtown?
That was years later after I was employed by the Houston Police Department. I don't remember the exact year. I was making an attempt to complete my degree, but encompassed some personal issues, so I took a class and stopped.
Alrighty. And what year did you enter the Houston Police Academy?
In June of 1995.
And when did you finish the Houston Police Academy?
December of 1995.
Now you have to be employed by the city of Houston before you get into the Houston Police Academy, right?
Well, for me, my case, it was getting employed at the same, I mean, getting into the academy,
Yeah.
I became an employee of the city of Houston.
Right. So
Yes.
that was your first day as an employee of the city of
Yes,
Houston,
sir.
is the day that you entered the academy.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, are you presently married?
I am, sir.
And you have any children?
I do.
How many children?
I have 2 boys.
How old are they?
One is 25,
Mm-hmm.
one is 29.
Okay. And have you been married to the same spouse for all this time?
No, sir.
Okay. What year were you first married?
On record, probably 1991.
So 1991, you were married to a lady. What was her name?
Counsel, I'm going to object to spousal identities, law enforcement privilege, and instruct the opponent not to disclose identities of family members, former family members.
I believe that could possibly lead to relevant information because, of course, for many reasons, you know, there might be a propensity for violence and so forth. Plus, this is in federal court, and of course, the Supremacy Clause says that federal law, not state law, applies in the federal court. So any state law privileges are not necessarily recognized by the federal court. If you have a federal case that you can cite me right now that says that there is a law enforcement privilege as to the identification of a former spouse, I'd like to hear it.
Counsel, we will maintain the assertion of privilege in Texas Government Code 552.
And what was the name of that code that you believe gives this officer the right to refuse to answer this question? What was the name of that code number?
Texas Government Code, Counsel, and also this is
With a section?
552 and a
552 what? That's pretty a large section.
well, the federal rules recognize many common law privileges, and among them is the law enforcement privilege.
And do you have a case?
No.
Certify that question. Bring it to the judge. Now, are you refusing to answer because your lawyer said so, that you're refusing to answer who your first wife was?
No, ma'am. I'm going to respectfully decline out of the safety and welfare of my family.
So,
Given
how does-
your client's background, I don't feel comfortable answering that information.
yeah.
Respectfully. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Just,
Well, we won't tell our client this information. And so, can you give us that information? We won't show him this deposition.
Same instruction.
I'm going to respectfully decline. I want to cooperate and answer your questions. That's just information I don't feel is in their best interest for me to answer.
When did you get a divorce from the first wife?
I believe that was finalized, don't hold me to it, but around 2009.
And where did you live when you had a divorce?
Well, I was living here in Houston. You mean specifically the address?
No.
Oh,
Houston.
Here in Houston, I'm sorry.
So you got a divorce in a Harris County family law court?
Yes, sir, I did.
And the divorce was granted in 2009, or did it linger for a while?
I think that was the final date.
You know what year it was filed?
I don't, I'm sorry. Sure, we can find out.
Sure. And your name was the same at that time?
Yes, sir.
Anton Mawhood?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And did you have any children by that first wife?
I did.
Both your children?
Yes, sir.
The 2 sons that you have?
That's correct.
Was there any accusations of spousal abuse?
No, sir.
Okay, and then when were you married to your second wife?
Just here recently, March 17th to be exact.
So in 2018, and you were married again right here in Harris County?
Yes, sir. Actually, we were married in, I believe it was Fort Bend County, sorry.
And is that where you got your...
Well, I'm sorry, we filled out the application for the certificate in Waller,
Yeah.
but the actual venue occurred in Fort Bend. So,
Okay, so
so it's a Waller County marriage certificate, I guess.
okay, a Waller County
Yes, sir.
marriage certificate.
Sorry.
Is that where you live nowadays, in Waller County?
No, sir.
Is that where she's from?
She has some family affiliation out there. Yes, sir.
And I take it you're not going to give me her name either, huh?
I would respectfully decline.
And we'll assert the privilege.
Well, there is no privilege, but I heard what you said. Okay, so you started in HPD in 1995.
Yes, sir.
And where were you first assigned?
Okay, so I did everything at Westside initially. I did my field training, completed my probationary period out there, and then remained out there as a patrol officer.
And you've never left? Or West Side to Midwest, and that's about it?
No, I can give you the history.
Yeah, what is your history?
I was a patrol officer for 17 years on evening shift.
Mm-hmm.
That was at Westside.
Mm-hmm.
Our department is broken down into districts, so
Yep.
that comprised of 3 districts,
Mm-hmm.
which was Midwest was a part of at that point.
Yes.
So I did ride that district, but it was Westside back then.
Okay.
Regardless, I did 17 years on evening shift patrol. Around March of 2013, I transferred to the DRT unit.
Drug recognition training?
No, sir, it's Differential Response Team.
Oh.
It's just a fancy acronym for kind of doing all of the projects where they don't know where else to send it.
Okay.
Okay. I spent approximately 4 years in that unit. While there, 2 of those years I spent serving on a warrant team.
Mm-hmm.
I left that unit last year in March.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to day shift patrol as a patrol officer.
Okay.
And then in August of last year, I transferred to a hotspot team at the Midwest Division.
And when you say a hotspot team, what is a hotspot?
Okay, so hotspot is just basically defines an area. Let's say there's a rash of crime going on, such as burglaries to vehicles or burglaries to businesses. Whatever the specific issue is, we're kind of sent out there to do higher presence and any kind of proactive investigations we can do.
Mm-hmm. So are you talking about apartment complexes,
Yes,
certain
sir.
neighborhoods where there's a
Yeah, actually,
high reporting of criminal activity?
absolutely, that's a perfect example. One of the issues every quarter is a crime analysis will, they will crunch their numbers, and if there's apartment complexes that are very high in Part 1, Part 2 crimes, then us along with patrol and other units will be sent to those areas to try to address the issues.
Now, who determines what a hot spot is? Who determines that?
All right, I guess the chain of command. That they, my understanding is, so our division has a crime analysis unit.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that look at all the reportable crimes. And then those reports get forwarded to the division commander or the captain. And then I believe it's the captain that kind of gives the directives on where we need to go. And then that just follows down the chain. The captain will tell the lieutenant, then tell the sergeant.
I got you. Now, how, to your knowledge, how long has HPD been identifying hotspots?
To my knowledge, I want to say as long as I've been on. It may not have always been, they may not have always used that terminology to define a hotspot, but as long as I've been on, the department has had what they call TAC teams or divisional gang units citywide, and those units get tasked with doing more of the response to those areas, because patrol is universal. Patrol responds to the calls for service loop.
Yeah.
So that's why they get tasked with that.
Now, where Helder Flores was shot, is there any paperwork that identifies that area as a hotspot?
Yes, sir. I believe if you were to try to obtain that information from the department, that area is a well-known. It's an area well-known for high crime and gang activity.
Okay. Have you ever been in a gang unit?
No, sir. I've not been in a gang unit.
Have you received any training in classes okayed by TCOL in gang activities and so forth?
I have taken gang classes through the Houston Police Academy, and I believe that they're certified by TCOL, or T-Close at that time.
Okay. So, are you familiar then with gang attire and gang tattoos?
To some degree, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, was there anything that Helder Flores was wearing that identifies him as a gang member?
Could be.
I mean,
Color of the clothing.
Well, what color was he wearing?
I don't remember the exact color.
So you're saying that he might have had something on him, but you couldn't identify a particular gang at this moment as we sit here today that Helder Flores belonged to, can you?
You mean based upon my initial observation?
Yep.
Not at the time of initial observation.
Okay. Now, is there any? You filled out a police report, correct?
Regarding this incident?
Yeah.
Well, it's standard operating procedure in these cases that a division like the homicide division would assume the paperwork.
Alrighty. Did you fill out a statement for homicide?
Yes, I did. Yes, sir.
Okay. In there, did you identify Helder Flores as a member of any gang?
In my statement?
Yes.
No, sir.
In any paperwork associated with this case, have you ever identified Helder Flores as a member of a gang?
I have not, no, sir.
Isn't that kind of important? If Helder Flores was a gang member, you might want to say, Helder Flores is a member of Tango Blast or the Houston group.
Yes, if I was taking primary on that investigation, it would be pertinent. But in this case, due to the circumstances, once homicide took it over, they conducted all that and came to those determinations.
So you never came to a determination whether Helder Flores belonged to any...
Not till after the fact, no, sir.
Okay. But at the time of the shooting, you did not, right?
No, sir. There was no way for me to have 100% concrete knowledge of that till after the incident was over.
Okay. But you have not written down on any piece of paper, as we sit here today, the taking of this deposition, that Helder Flores belonged to a gang, have you?
No, sir.
Do you know what the colors are of the Houston group?
I believe they involve red and blue,
Red and blue?
to the best of my knowledge.
You don't know? Okay, how about Tango Blast? Do they have special colors?
I'm not aware if they are of their colors.
Okay, besides those two groups, are you aware of any colors that Hispanic gangs have?
Not concretely, no, sir.
Okay. So if Helder Flores was wearing some different kind of colors, you really couldn't say he's in this gang or that gang?
No, but based on my experience, what we found, like Southwest Cholos, they'll wear either black pants or tan pants with white T-shirts. That's typically what my experience. That's what I found.
Yeah. Well, don't high schoolers often wear white T-shirts? Hispanic high schoolers?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that sometimes what they
Absolutely.
they're part of their uniform?
Let him finish his question.
Okay. So it's very common to see a lot of Hispanic people with white T-shirts, correct?
It could be.
Yeah. So what was Helder Flores wearing that day?
Without reviewing my report, I don't.
Okay. Do you know what shoes he was wearing?
The shoes, no,
Yeah.
sir.
Pants?
I don't recall 100%.
Shirt?
Don't recall 100%.
Jewelry?
No, sir.
So you don't know if he was wearing a watch, rings?
I don't recall.
Do you know if he had a cell phone on him at the time he was shot?
That I do not know.
Okay. Was he wearing a hat?
Counsel, let me object to that. You shot, misstates the evidence.
So that he was shot?
Yes.
Okay. So, so you don't know if he was wearing a hat that day?
I don't believe he was.
Okay. Can you identify any? Did you see any tattoos on Helder Flores before he was shot?
No, sir. I don't recall seeing any.
Have you ever seen a tattoo on Helder Flores?
No, sir. Not till after. I believe there were some photos.
But you never saw one on that day?
No, sir.
Was it hot that day?
Yes, sir.
And so Helder Flores, was he in short sleeve or long sleeve shirt?
Short sleeve when I can remember.
Okay. And like you say, you never saw any tattoos prior to him being shot?
I don't recall noticing that. No.
Okay. Do you know if he was wearing work boots?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay. Now, immediately after he was shot, did you then approach him to see his condition?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And so how close did you get to him?
Within feet. I mean, a few feet.
Okay. Did you get close to his, his face so that you could see if he was breathing or ask him any questions?
Yes. I could see that he was breathing, but I could see that he was injured.
Okay. When you got really close to him after he was shot, did you then see any tattoos?
No, sir. I wasn't looking for that at that point. I was more concerned about getting medical help and securing the scene.
Okay. Now, did you see 4 guys in a car that drove by Helder Flores prior to the shooting?
I did not.
Have you ever heard of, in any police report that you're aware of or any writing, did you claim that there were 4 guys in a car that, or any guys in a car that drove by Helder Flores and his group prior to the shooting?
Did I report that? Is
Yeah.
what you're asking? No, I didn't report that.
Okay, and did you see anybody in less than 4 people in a car who drove by who might be menacing Helder Flores?
I don't remember seeing that, no, sir.
Okay. You say you have some experience in that area with gangs.
In the area where this
Where
incident
you
occurred?
were, yeah, with this incident. Well, let me back up to. your 17 years, or let's strike all that. In your time with HPD, you become familiar with the various gangs, correct?
Yes, sir, to some degree, yes, sir.
And you've heard of the gang MS-13, correct?
Yes, sir, I have.
And what's so important about MS-13 versus other kind of gangs?
They tend to be more violent.
Okay. These are very violent gangs, and don't they also a lot of times have tattoos on their necks and their face?
Yes, that's been my experience. They'll have MS or 13 or something like that.
Right. So, in the hot spots where you've worked, have you ever seen any MS-13 gang members?
I've come across a few, yes, sir.
Okay. And how about so when you say they're prone to violence, you mean like murdering people,
Yes, sir.
shooting people,
Yes, sir.
sexually assaulting women?
Yes, sir.
How would you rank them in terms of violence as to the other group gangs in Houston, Texas?
I would say they're one of the top gangs in violence.
Okay. And in these hot spots that you've been patrolling, and on the west side and in the Midwest, have you seen MS gang members?
I've come across a reasonable amount, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
A reasonable amount.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, what other gangs do you think are on the top of the violence scale in Houston, Texas? In your experience?
Depending on the area. So for the southwest area,
Yeah.
MS-13 would probably be at the top. Southwest Cholos would be up there. SPPL. Those would probably be the top three that I could think of. I mean, there's others, but
And they're up on the top of the violence scale.
in my opinion, yes, sir.
Okay.
Based on my experience.
Alrighty. Now, this spot where this incident occurred, is it La Estancia?
La Estancia, I believe.
La Estancia. Okay. Is that in an area where you also had uniformed patrol duties?
I did not have uniform patrol duties in that area. I just worked the extra employment in that area.
Is it close to your uniformed patrol areas?
Yeah, it's not far.
Okay.
Like 59 is
Yeah. 59?
the freeway. That's
Yeah.
the cutoff.
Now, when you said that La Estancia area could be considered a hot spot, is that due to gang activity?
That's one of the activities, yes, sir.
Including the violent gangs, the something, did you say West Side Cholos?
Southwest Cholos?
Southwest Cholos and MS-13?
Yes, sir.
You had never met Helder Flores prior to him being shot, had you?
No, sir.
How about those other two people who were nearby? Had you ever met those two people?
Daniel Vargas and Mr. Cruz?
Yeah.
I had not met either one of those individuals.
Do you know if your partner had ever met Daniel Vargas or Mr. Cruz or Helder Flores prior to the day that Helder Flores was shot?
I mean, I can't answer for Officer Harris, but to my knowledge, no.
He never mentioned, oh, hey, that's Daniel Vargas.
Oh, no.
So he never identified any of those three people by name, did he?
No, sir.
Did he ever say that he knew any of those three people?
No, sir.
Have you ever been arrested before?
No, sir.
So then I take it you've never been convicted of a crime before.
That's correct.
You're familiar with the Houston Police Internal Affairs Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many times has the Houston Internal Affairs Department investigated a situation in which there was some complaint about yourself?
Well, let me think. Where IAD was involved, I want to say this incident and 2 other incidents. The only other infraction I've had was a minor accident that did not involve IAD.
So for that minor accident, were you given discipline?
Yes, sir, I was.
Yeah. And you remember what year that was?
2007,
And what was the discipline you received?
written warning.
Okay. And then did you say there was another accident?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, yeah, could you give me the details of the accident, like what happened?
We were responding to a burglary in progress. We had passed up the entrance to the location, so I stopped, I reversed. I had my emergency equipment on, but I turned the siren off.
Yeah.
So when I was making the turn, I was turning to go in, and the vehicle came and we made minor contact. So they wrote it up as a double fault.
I see. So because you didn't have your siren on when you're doing an emergency maneuver?
Well, we had arrived, so upon arrival, it's common practice on that type of call, if we have a burglary in progress, when we're arriving in the area, we'll cut the siren as to not alert any possible suspects. So I'd cut the siren, had the strobes on, made the turn, and then had the collision.
I see.
Yes, sir.
Now, I believe there was something in the record, and we're going to get it out here pretty soon, but there was an in-custody death. What was that about?
Okay, so what that was more of a formality, if you will, as far as the way the department handles things.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. My partner and I had been dispatched to what we call a CIT disturbance. That's a disturbance involving someone who suffers from mental illness.
Yep.
Upon our arrival, this occurred at a hotel. On our arrival, of course, we had notified the dispatcher that we were arriving. HFD was already on the scene working with the individual, and before we made contact with the individual committed suicide. But
Before you arrived, they committed suicide?
No, sir. I'm sorry. We arrived. We notified dispatcher. We arrived on the scene, and before we made contact with her, she committed suicide. But since we were arrived on the scene, they handled it as a death in custody.
And how did she commit suicide?
She shot herself.
And was that in 2002?
I believe so. On or about that time. Sounds about right. Maybe November.
Okay.
I just remember it was Veterans Day.
Prior to arriving, had you received information that the person had a gun?
No, sir. We did not.
So when you arrived, was it at an apartment complex? Where was it?
It was a hotel.
Hotel. And you arrived at the scene. Did you go to the front desk and ask where it was, or did you already know?
I don't recall. I know that hotel security had called it in. I believe we were kind of directed. I think somebody met us in the lobby, and they were taking us up to the 5th floor.
Okay. And prior to you actually going into the door, did you hear a gunshot?
As we were coming down the hallway, we heard the gunshot. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Or as we were in the hallway, or the corridor leading to the room.
And was the individual dead when you got the door open?
Yes. By the time we were able to get into the room, I believe she was deceased.
Was the door locked?
No, it was not locked.
How long did it take you from the time you heard the gunshot to the time you saw her body?
I don't recall.
I mean, was it 3 hours, or was it?
No.
Was it 1 minute?
It wasn't. I don't recall. I mean, it was quick. We safe. We had to make a safe approach in there, of course, to clear it. I believe protocol is to try to get a CIT officer on the scene as well. So I think I can't remember if they were arrived or not right at that time, but we made, out of good faith, every reasonable effort to get in there as soon as possible, at the same time trying to maintain safety for all involved.
Was there some accusation that the person who committed suicide had just committed some sort of crime?
Not that I recall, no, sir. That was a situation also where the Houston Fire Department was already working the scene, so.
And they said they were working the scene. What were they doing?
They were communicating with her husband and trying to, I guess, deal with her mental illness.
Where was the husband?
I don't know. He wasn't there.
So they were on the phone with him?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Counsel, before your next question, can we go through so I can go to the bathroom?
You can do it?
So I can have a bathroom.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear you. Go ahead.
The time is 10:18 a.m. and we're off the record.
You think we'll be through by mid-afternoon?
Time is 10:35 a.m. We're back on the record.
Mr. Mawhood, I'm going to show you a document which is marked as Exhibit Number 1.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Yes, sir.
And have you ever seen this particular document before?
Yes, sir.
And what is it?
This is it's like a snapshot of your IAD complaint history.
Okay. Now, we talked about the first one at the top, death in custody.
Yes, sir.
And the disposition was information. Can you explain to me what that means, information?
I can't. I don't. We don't get involved in how they classify that, and I've never been explained what information is, but typically in our line of work, information is a formality.
Does every death in custody is investigated, correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So you were not given a supervisory intervention or any other form of discipline?
No, sir, I was not.
Okay. And the second one, I believe, is the one we talked about, the at-fault accident, which was sustained.
Yes, sir.
And what was your discipline in that one?
That was a written warning.
Written warning.
Yes, sir.
Now we're looking at the next one, which is dated 2011, improper police procedure. It looks like it was sustained to begin with, is that correct?
Well, let me think how this went. Yeah, I guess if you're looking at this, that's how I would read that it was sustained to begin with, but we went to arbitration. My recollection of that was, I contested that. We went to arbitration on it before there was a disposition that I was told of. Okay, yes. And then they sided with me on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they actually sustained me, and then it was all part of the same.
Doesn't there have to be a disposition before you can appeal it?
That's what I'm just telling you what I remember. I don't remember them serving me with a sustained finding on it. I just remember that I fill out the paperwork, answering the questions, and then we went to a hearing on it.
Okay.
But it's very possible. I mean, the way I'm reading that, it could have been sustained. I just don't recall being served up with a disposition paper.
Did you testify at the arbitration?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. So you're pretty versed in what this was all about, right?
About what the complaint was about?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What was it about?
Okay, so I was working an extra job at the time.
What was the name of that extra job?
It was an apartment complex.
Which apartment complex?
It was located at, I don't remember the name, but it was located at 12710 Brant Rock.
12710. Could you spell Brant Rock?
Yes, sir. It's 2 words. First word, Brant, B-R-A-N-T.
Huh?
And second word, Rock.
Okay. And you had an extra job there?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And what was your duties there at this apartment complex at 12710 Brant Rock?
Just to enforce all the applicable local, state, and federal laws while working the premises.
Was it called Trails of Ashford Apartments?
Yes, sir, I believe it was.
Okay, and so what happened?
So I was working the extra job with my sergeant at the time. We were a 2-man unit.
And what's your sergeant's name?
At that time, it was Derek Rice.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and basically we ended up arresting an individual for being in possession of marijuana. The individual apparently was in a vehicle that he did not own, and there was apparent family members that showed up stating he didn't have, he wasn't supposed to be in the vehicle, even though it wasn't reported stolen or anything, but he was not the registered owner. And so as part of the arrest, not having the registered owner there, we towed the vehicle and all its contents and sent it to an authorized storage lot.
Okay.
Mr. McGee filed a complaint stating that he had a wallet in the vehicle that belonged to him.
Okay. And Mr. McGee, spelled M-C-G-E-E, was the complainant?
I guess it's M-A-G-E-E.
Okay.
Based on what I'm looking at here.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
alrighty. So that's the name of the complainant. Okay, it's listed right there. Alrighty. So he claimed that a wallet was missing?
He claimed that his wallet was sent with the vehicle and not with him. And there was nothing in the wallet to indicate that it belonged to him. And at the beginning of the scene, he was trying to distance himself from the vehicle, and then at the end of the scene, he was saying that it was his vehicle. But we had other information at the scene that indicated that he was not the registered owner. So we followed protocol, and we towed the vehicle to an authorized storage lot. And the reason that we won that complaint was because when we tow a vehicle, there is a form, a department-issued form called a tow slip, and on that tow slip, we take an inventory, and the wallet was documented on the inventory, which is a department-issued form, and so that's what that was about.
So his complaint was that you didn't give him his wallet, you sent it with the vehicle?
Yes, that's initially how it got written up. Of course, he alleged that he had $80 or something in the wallet that was missing when he got it and things of that nature. There was other variables in there, but the initial complaint on how it got written up was the reason they classified it as improper police procedure is because he claimed that the wallet belonged to him. There was nothing that attached him to that wallet. We sent it with the vehicle.
Okay. And I see that the next one is over the same. Oh, was that individual a resident of the apartment complex?
No, he was not.
Okay. And how did you know that he was not a resident of the apartment complex?
Based on his own self-admission, stating that he didn't live there.
Did you contact the manager or anybody at the apartment complex to see if he was allowed on the property?
We followed up the next day because we arrested him at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
So you followed up with the apartment complex to see if he was a resident, or?
That's correct.
All right. Did you also check to see if there was a trespass warrant against him that the management had?
We did. We did.
Yeah.
There was no specific trespass warning against him, but they did have a trespass affidavit on file.
Okay. And so how about the crime that he was convicted of? Do you know if he was convicted of a crime, Mr. McGee?
Of what we charged him with?
Yeah, do you know if he was ever convicted?
On that specific crime,
Yeah.
I didn't follow up with the decision.
And what was the specific crime he was?
We charged him with possession of marijuana.
Okay.
And I can't remember if we charged him with anything else. We may have tried charging him with resisting, but I think it ended up just being the DA just took possession of marijuana, to the best of my recollection.
So at that apartment complex, you arrested an individual, then did a follow-up investigation.
I'm sorry, sir?
In that particular instance, you arrested the individual at the apartment complex, the Trails of Ashford Apartments, and then after you arrested him, you did a follow-up investigation with the apartment complex.
Right. Well, we basically notify them, hey, this is what happened last night,
Yeah.
and then verify that he was not a tenant there.
And that there was no trespass affidavit.
Well, I'm sorry, not affidavit. They did have an affidavit,
Yeah.
but they didn't advise us that they had dealt with him in particular before.
Did they give you a copy of that affidavit?
The affidavit it's a copy. The way affidavits work, property management will fill out an affidavit.
Yes.
They'll post a copy at the premises, so it's on notice for everybody.
Sure.
And then they keep the original copy at the station of the division they're at. So the original copy would have been kept at Westside.
Okay, so then and where did you see the copy? At the apartment complex?
At the apartment complex, yes, sir.
And do you recall where they posted it on the apartment complex?
Yes, sir. They posted up there, usually at the front at the leasing office.
Okay. And so, and you had seen it, you went and looked at it before or after?
Yes, well, we had been working the property,
Yeah.
and so anytime we start working a property, one of the first things we do
Yeah.
is we check the status of their trespass affidavits to make sure that they're current.
Okay.
And so we had prior knowledge that the affidavit was posted and was current.
Yeah. So when you first work in apartment complex, and how many of you worked total, do you think?
Apartment complexes?
Yeah.
A few dozen.
A few dozen, and most of them prior to the shooting of Elder Flores, correct?
Good amount prior to, yes, sir.
And one of the things that you do prior to that is you check with management on the trespass affidavits.
Yes, sir.
And what other information do you ask of the management when you first get a job?
Well, usually the way this works, like for these complexes, there's a coordinator
Yeah.
for the property. The coordinator is the one that approaches us and advises us that they have a property that's requesting off-duty police to work, and then he'll advise us or keep us posted usually of these are the issues that they're complaining about.
Okay. Now the coordinator, they work for HPD or the apartment complex?
It's a Houston police officer.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And they tell you orally or is it written down?
Typically it's orally.
Oral. And they can give you any sorts of instructions, whatever the instructions are. They just tell you orally what they are.
Yeah, usually whatever it's all criminal related.
Yeah.
So anything they'll talk to us about is going to be, hey, these are the kinds of crimes or suspicious activity leading up to, like, for example, if there's a lot of foot traffic coming and going,
Yeah.
they suspect narcotics is involved, they'll ask us to keep an eye out on that issue.
Okay. When you say they, you mean the apartment complex suspects narcotics are involved, and they inform the coordinator, and then
Yes, sir.
the coordinator tells you.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's typically how it goes.
Yeah. But there's no rule that you can't talk to the manager.
That's correct.
And oftentimes you need information, so you go talk to the manager, wouldn't you?
Yes, if we were working during the hours, the business hours for the leasing office,
Yeah.
it would not be uncommon for us to check in with them
Yeah.
and get an update and say, hey, is there anything specific that happened today that you're concerned about that you need us to look at?
Yeah, and that's
Criminally
very,
speaking.
that's very common. I mean, you're working, you go talk to the management, see what's up, see what you got to do that day, right?
Part of it, yeah, part of the job, yes, sir.
And that's pretty much the same way it was at La Estancia, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, do you usually visit the management, you say usually at the beginning of the shift, just to check in and say, hey, anything been happening recently? Is that basically what you do?
If we're working hours where they're open,
Yeah.
yes, sir. We usually will check in with them.
And in the Helder Flores matter, your La Estancia, that was during normal business hours, wasn't it?
I believe they had already closed for the day.
But when you start the shift?
No, when we started the shift, they had already closed.
Yeah, so
To my knowledge, that's what I remember.
on that particular shift.
On that particular day, yes, sir.
Yeah, but on other days, you didn't always work the exact same shift, did you?
That's correct.
Because you want to vary it, because otherwise they go, hey, the police are here from 6 to 10, so let's do our drug dealing after 10.
Absolutely, that was one reason, and it's also to give a more broad coverage so
Sure.
that we're not always working daytime hours or evening hours or night hours.
Right. So on those times, when you were there, when the management office was open, you'd stop by the management office frequently and check out what's happening, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, going back to exhibit number 1, just to finish up on that improper police procedure where it says sustained, that was temporarily sustained, what element was the temporarily sustained portion? What did they initially say that you did wrong? You should have given him the wallet, or what was the deal?
Well, that's just it. We had, through that process, I don't think the department takes a stance until there's a final disposition. Once we put them on notice, I guess there's a procedure set up, so once we put them on notice that we're contesting the whole thing,
Yeah.
I don't remember them, I don't recall having any discussion about it until we were at arbitration and the captain of the division was there
Yeah.
explaining to the arbitrator. So he didn't necessarily, it was directed at me, of course,
Sure.
but he was explaining to the arbitrator that what they felt we should have done is taken the wallet out of the vehicle and tagged it at the property room instead of leaving it in the vehicle. Our defense or our response to that was there was nothing in the wallet, no IDs or anything like that, that had Mr. McGee's name on it. And since he wasn't the registered owner and there was people on the scene contesting that he was supposed to be there, we felt it was better to document it on the tow slip and send it to the storage lot.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
And now there was a separate, what was in the wallet?
Oh, I don't recall exactly. It was empty. I believe there might have been some random pieces of paper, but there was no credit cards, there were no IDs.
Yeah, and all that would be documented in that particular IAD complaint.
Yes, sir. If you grab that file, it should all be in there.
Did you recall any cash being there?
No, sir. There was no cash in the wallet.
And the second accusation in that same incident was conduct and behavior. Do you recall what the charge was or the accusation on that, on conduct and behavior?
I don't recall what he reported that led them to categorize that. My understanding was they took the letter and then had possible avenues of what they would categorize it at, and then they ended up going with improper police procedure.
Okay. Now, on the last one listed here in Exhibit 1, it says question regarding, and that's also listed in that same incident. So what was that about?
I have no idea what that means, to be honest with you.
Okay. How long had you been working at La Estancia prior to Helder Flores being shot?
Well, okay, so this particular setup, let me, if I can explain this.
Sure.
So, on some apartment complex gigs, it's not uncommon to obtain a permit for the management company, and the management company will manage several properties citywide. So what I want to say with this particular company, our very first permit was for a different location. We started working that property. They were happy with what we were doing. So then a sister property wanted us over there. So we filled out a second permit to get that. And we may have filled out a couple more by the time it was all said and done, but it kind of grew. So I think, I want to say around April of 2013 maybe. Mm-hmm. I had filled out a subsequent permit for Guardian Equity, who I believe was the management company at that time, or this according to the coordinator. Mm-hmm. And that's when we added La Estancia to the permit. I'm not sure exactly when we started working, but I want to say it was sometime in 2013. Would have been the first time that we would have went out there.
Okay. So this particular management company, which you worked at for some time, what was the name? What's the name of that management company?
I don't hold me to it, but I want to say Guardian Equity. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So Guardian Equity, you first started working with that management company in which year?
2013.
In 2013.
Yes,
and
sir.
do you remember recollect the name of that first property that you worked for Guardian?
Yes, I want to say the very first property we worked for them was Madison Park Apartments, and that was located at 9801 Meadow Glen.
Okay. And about what year was that?
I want to say that was in March of 2013.
Now, you were here yesterday or the day before, was it? Yeah, the day before, during the testimony of your partner, Officer Harris, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he seemed to indicate that y'all had been working extra jobs together for some time. When you say we, did you mean with Officer Harris?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so when you worked at Madison Glen, that was with Officer Harris also?
Well, actually, not initially. Officer Harris was on a special assignment when I first started working Meadow Glen. So the first several times, I believe I worked with Officer Prowsey, who's the coordinator.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
But Officer Harris came on with the second property, or when was the very first property for Guardian that both you and Harris worked at the same time?
Probably in April, I want to say.
April.
To the best of my recollection.
In April of 2013?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay. And what was that name of that first property that y'all worked together?
It was Madison Park.
Madison Park.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically you started off with Prowsey, but then you changed to Harris.
That's correct.
Okay. And then can you name some of the other properties for Guardian Equity that both you and Mr. Harris worked at prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
I can name, I'll do my best. I want to say Central Park Apartments, which was located at 3230 South Gessner.
Okay.
I know there was, let me think, Beech Nut and Bisnat, but I can't remember the exact address. I believe they had a property over there. Maybe one at 6000 Bisnat.
Okay.
And then 6200 Gulfton. That's all that I can think of right now that would have been prior to that, for that company.
Oh, for that company.
Yes.
Okay. And so now, the permit that you had in this case, I've seen the paperwork. It lists a bunch of apartment complexes. Are all those Guardian?
Well,
or is there a mixture with some
yes.
other
So
companies?
for like the one permit that you're looking at,
Yeah.
you may be looking at for Guardian, all the properties for Guardian would be in that bottom box. Okay, showing the breakdown. And that's just now. Bear in mind, we started working one. Then he said there may be a possibility that they may want you to other locations. So when we contacted Extra Employment, we said, hey, if we have one management company that has multiple properties citywide that we may or may not work, do we need to put it on there? We were instructed, yes, put them all on there whether you get sent to them or not. So there may be properties on there that are on the permit just to cover us, but we never actually got sent to.
Okay. Well, then to clarify, I'm going to mark this one particular permit as exhibit number 2.
Yes, sir.
And,
Sorry. Thank you.
I want you to look at that particular permit and tell me what a permit is.
Okay, so HPD, which I agree with, it's a progressive department. It takes every precaution to make sure that we're working credible, legitimate locations. So anytime that we work an extra job, we fill out an application and we request a permit to be authorized to work there as a police officer off duty. So that's what the permit does for us. So we fill out the information, our immediate supervisor reviews it and then sends it up to extra employment. They're going to review it to make sure that there's no conflict of interest, if you will, and for other reasons. And then they'll authorize us to work it, or they cannot authorize you to work it.
Okay. Okay. Now, looking at this particular permit, when is the submission date?
Okay, so this submission date on this particular permit is March 28th of 2015.
And was that was prior to the shooting of Helder Flores, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. But the way these permits, so for example, if you were to pull, which you can have access to, if you were to pull the records, it's going to show over 200 records of employment, or I'm sorry, permits, excuse me. The way these work, though, one permit is good for 1 calendar year.
Okay.
So if I take a permit out in March of 2013, I have to renew it. Well, they'll give you till your birth month the following year, but relatively, you have to renew it every year.
Yeah.
So you could have the same job with different permit numbers over the course of time, depending on how long you have that job.
Okay, and if you make a slight change to the permit, then it gets a new permit number?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one that you have in exhibit number 2, that was the permit that was in effect, which allowed you to work the extra job at La Estancia Apartments, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir. Looks like it.
And they don't say laws. The actual business name is Guardian Equity Management.
Yeah, and I guess it changed, because here it says Guardian Catalyst Hot Ocean.
It says near the top business name. It says Guardian what?
Those are 2 different documents.
Understand. The next copy it is.
Oh, you're saying.
So okay. It says Guardian what?
It says here Guardian Catalyst / Hot Ocean Management. So they must have went through
Name change.
a merger or a name change.
But it's the same people, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, looking down at the list of all these different addresses under the comments section,
Yes, sir.
are all those addresses there? Since this is a Guardian permit, are all those addresses there properties of Guardian, or places that they manage?
Yes, and let me clarify, the locations that we have in the comment section here
Yep.
would have been properties managed by Guardian, okay, that we would work. It may not necessarily reflect all of the properties they own, but these are the ones that we may or may not have been sent to,
Okay.
that they manage. Yes, sir.
Now, could you go through that list of addresses there and tell me which ones that you worked at prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
Okay, I know for a fact I worked 3230 South Gessner prior to. I believe I worked 6833 Beech Nut prior to the best of my what I can recall. I believe we worked the 4000 West 34th Street, but I'm not 100% sure.
How about that Gulfton one?
Oh, the Gulfton one prior to this incident? Yes,
Yeah.
sir. We worked that one. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I thought that was...
And how about the next? How about the rest? How about 6833 Beech Nut?
I believe we did. Yes, sir.
So you worked at 6833 Beech Nut prior to the Helder Flores shooting.
As to the best of my recollection, I believe we did.
Okay.
I did. Yes, sir.
And how about the apartment complex at 13725 Cambury? Did you work that prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
I don't recall.
How about 6200 West Tidwell? Did you work that one prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
It's possible, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. How about the next one, 4300 Sherwood Lane? Where's that at?
4300 Sherwood. Okay. If I recall that one correctly, I want to say maybe north, what's considered for HPD North Shepherd's area, but I'm not 100% sure.
And did you work at the apartment complex at 4300 Sherwood Lane prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
I believe I did, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to go back. So we have timesheets that you can pull. I mean, we log hours and stuff like that there.
And on those timesheets, do you list then which address you're at?
Yes, sir. Well, we
And
list.
the name of the complex?
It's changed over the years. It's either the permit or the location.
Okay, so on your timesheets, which must be, are all your timesheets of extra jobs submitted to HPD?
Yes.
Okay. So on there, it should either say the permit number or the location where you're working?
Yes.
Yeah. And how about the next one, 12600 South Gessner? Did you work at that apartment complex
Prior to?
managed by Guardian? Yes, prior to the shooting of Helder Flores?
I'm not sure.
Okay. How about 4506 Sherwood Lane?
I'm not sure about that one either.
How about 12615 Brookglade?
I know we worked some of these properties you're mentioning.
Yeah.
As to whether or not I worked them before this incident, I don't know. I'd have to make reference
Okay,
to
so even those other addresses I mentioned, you might have worked those after Helder. the
It's
shooting of Helder Flores.
possible. The ones that I was sure about, like 3230, I know I worked that one before.
Okay. Now, at these prior places, prior to the shooting of Helder Flores, where you worked for Guardian, did you make arrests at those apartment complexes?
Yes, we did.
And did you do follow-ups with the management at those apartment complexes?
Yes, we did.
And when we say the management, those would be Guardian employees, correct?
Well, let me clarify for record. Most of the time, what I would do is I would notify the coordinator.
Yes.
Okay, and that could either be through a verbal phone
Yeah.
conversation on the phone, a follow-up in person with them if I saw them the next
Yeah.
day, or sometimes I would text them
Yeah.
a message that, hey, we made this arrest at this location, and then he would convey that to management.
But as you testified before, there was nothing stopping you from contacting the Guardian management at these complexes, was there?
Correct.
And you often did to investigate things, correct?
There would be occasions where if we were, working the property that evening and we got done late, and then we went in the next day early, if I hadn't contacted the coordinator, absolutely, I would go in there and let them know what we had done.
Yeah, and as you testified earlier, you said very frequently you would go talk to the Guardian management and to see what's up for that day, if something had happened since your last shift, for example, or maybe they had an update on the drugs that were being sold out of a certain complex or apartment or something, right?
Yeah.
Objection. The state's evidence very frequently. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to clarify. I mean, I don't know how I would measure frequently what you would define as that, but it certainly occurred. We would let them know.
Okay.
But most of the time it went through the coordinator.
All right. Now, in regards to your work history, after you graduated from high school, you worked for HPD starting in '95. What other jobs did you have after you graduated from high school? You mentioned one where you were
Painting apartments.
painting apartments. Did you have any other jobs?
Yes, sir. Spent a lot of time in the restaurant industry.
Okay, which restaurants did you work for?
Well, probably the longest tenure would be Ninfa's Mexican restaurant.
Which one?
The one off of Westheimer, around the 5700 block. It's right
Okay.
there.
And when did you work there?
I don't remember the exact dates, but it was sometime following graduation and after attending U of H. I mean, I maintained that job for a good period of time.
And were you fired from that job?
Was I fired from that
Yes.
job? No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever receive any discipline when you were working at that job?
I received counseling, I think, for driving behavior on one occasion.
Were you a deliverer?
At one point they started, we were delivering fajitas.
And so they counseled you because you had an accident, or why?
I didn't have an accident. I don't remember what the original complaint was, but I remember somebody talking to me, just be careful when you're driving because you've got the sign on.
Oh, okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
Yeah. Besides an infos, what other non-police jobs non-HPD job did you have prior to getting the HPD job?
I worked for a good length of time at a company called CUC International.
And what did they do for business?
They ran various, they marketed and then serviced various auto-related products. My role there initially, I started out in a membership retention department where somebody was not happy, they would call to cancel and we would try to save them. And then I went on into customer service as a customer service representative, and there I promoted to assistant supervisor and then supervisor in that division. And I was there maybe 5 years, just shy of 5 years, roughly.
And was that just prior to you getting the HPD job?
Well, I left that company.
Well, let me just end up with that company then. Were you fired from that company?
Oh, no, sir.
And did you have any discipline while you were there at CUC?
Initially, I had some for punctuality.
Okay. And can you tell me the exact name of that company?
I believe it was CompuCard International at the time.
CompuCard International?
Yes, sir.
And it was located where?
On West Alabama.
In Houston?
Yes, sir. In Houston, I'm sorry.
You remember the approximate block?
3,800 maybe?
Okay. And you don't have any other, do you have any other identifying information at this time about CUC? Phone numbers?
Oh,
management?
No, sir, I'm sorry. They've changed names since then. I'm not sure what they're called now.
You're not sure what they're called now?
No, sir.
Okay. And what was your next non-HPD job that you had?
So right after that, I left there and went to work for a scientific laboratory equipment distributor company. I'm trying to think of the name. It was a very short period. I had left there naturally for an increase in pay for the position, but then within months, I got the offer to join the Houston Police Department. So I was there for a very short. It was Curtin Matheson Scientific. Sorry.
Curtis Matheson Scientific.
I think it was Curtin, not Curtis. Curtin Matheson Scientific, I believe.
What was the middle word?
Matheson?
Matheson.
Yes, sir.
Like MATHIESEN?
ESON
or maybe S-O-N?
Maybe, yes, sir.
And what did they do for work?
What that company did is they had outside sales reps that went, basically went to hospitals, clinics, things of that nature to try to sell their laboratory and scientific equipment. I worked to support that group as a customer service supervisor. So they would make the sale, we would service their customers.
Who did you talk to after the shooting of Helder Flores at La Estancia Apartments?
I mean, can you be more specific? I don't.
Okay, well,
sorry.
Let's back up. Well, let's talk about that one other arrest you had. The guy who was with the wallet and all that. You were working at which apartment complex at that time?
On the arrest involving Mr. McGee?
Yeah.
The Ashford Trails.
Okay. You testified that after that you did some investigation and you talked to someone in management there. So who did you talk to in management at that particular?
I don't recall. I don't recall her name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it was some management person, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Do you remember if it was a woman or a man?
I remember that the I don't remember specifically who we dealt with, but the manager of the complex for the Grant Rock location was a female at the time.
But you don't recall who you actually dealt with on the occasion
No,
when you were...
Actually, I'm sorry. It could have been a male, actually. Sorry. I don't
Okay.
recall.
All right. And at the La Estancia, was that a male or female manager?
I want to say I recall it being a female there.
And what was the ethnicity of that manager?
I want to say Hispanic, but I'm not 100% sure.
And were they older, younger? Do you remember that?
I don't. Probably the same age as me, maybe. Maybe a little younger. I don't know.
Old as me?
As you?
A spring chicken. Okay. And was Officer Harris with you when you did that follow-up investigation with management on the McGee matter?
No, I wasn't working with Officer Harris at that point. I was working with Sergeant Rice.
Okay. Any other jobs since high school that we haven't discussed before you worked at HPD?
I mean, since high school, I couldn't recall. You know how it is in college. You going from $5 an hour to $6 an hour makes a big deal. So, but I think those are the most significant ones.
Okay. Have you ever fired your weapon on duty?
I have not.
Have you ever drawn your weapon on duty?
I have.
About how many occasions?
I wouldn't be able to give you a number.
And is that a Glock 23 and 19?
It's a Glock 22C, 40 caliber.
And is that the service weapon you had at the time of the shooting of Helder Flores?
Yes, sir, it is.
You didn't pull your gun in the Helder Flores incident, did you?
I did.
Did you? But you did not discharge a weapon?
I did not.
Did you pull it before or after the shooting of Helder Flores?
I pulled it before.
Well, yeah, why did you pull the gun on prior to Helder Flores being shot by your partner, Mr. Harris?
Because just prior to that, Officer Harris had alerted me that he saw Mr. Flores pull a gun.
Okay. So Officer Harris advised you that he had seen Helder Flores pull a gun, and then you pulled your gun.
You know, the exact chronological order of things would be too difficult for me to give you a precise, exact timing.
Yeah.
It was a rapidly evolving, spontaneous event. But as just prior to Officer Harris engaging Mr. Flores, these three individuals were all together on my side of the vehicle. At this last minute, at the last second, just prior to Officer Harris engaging, they had split up, and Mr. Flores had ran around to Tommy's side of the vehicle while Mr. Negron and the other individual stayed on my side. So at that point, the fact that we had a possible split threat, I maintained a visual on the two that were on my side, and Mr. Harris focused on Mr. Flores because he ran around on his side.
And you never reported in any of your statements that you saw Mr. Flores with a gun prior to being shot, did you?
Yes, I did see a gun before he... Yes, I saw a gun that Mr. Flores had before time he engaged. Or as he was engaging, I should say.
We're going to pause for the tape to be
Need to
changed.
take a restroom?
Yeah, I do need to go to the
Okay,
restroom.
let's
real
take a
quick. I'll make it quick.
The time is 11:18 a.m. This is the end of meeting one. We're off the